The one who walks between worlds drinks from a cup of shadows. Warrior Shaman. Before gods wore crowns, before kings built halls of stone, there was only the dark and the fire that held it back. 10,000 years ago, the world was colder, wilder, and so much quieter. Ice still gripped the highlands. Forests stretched for unbroken miles. When night fell, it was absolute, and the only light came from flame and stars. Around those small fires, our ancestors gathered in silence, faces painted in ash, the smell of smoke heavy in their hair. They stared into the embers, listening to something older than words, a whisper between the crackle of wood and the cry of the wind. To survive then was no small thing. It wasn't strength alone that saved a tribe. It was respect. They understood that the world around them was alive. Every rock, every stream, every gust of wind had meaning and intent. To them, the world breathed. Stones had patience. Rivers remembered their stories. Wolves and deer were not just prey, but teachers, kin, and rivals. To live without balance was to invite death. You gave, and the world gave back. You took without asking, and the frost would find you. And among those few who sat by the fire, there was always one who listened closest. The one painted with ochre and soot, crowned with feathers or antlers, sitting at the threshold between light and shadow. They weren't chiefs or warriors. They were bridge builders, messengers between two realities. We call them shamans now. That word shaman comes to us from Siberia, but the role existed everywhere, from the forests of Europe to the plains of Asia, from the Arctic tundra to the deserts of Africa. The names changed, but the purpose did not. When sickness struck, when the herds vanished, when storms carved paths across the earth, people turned to the one who spoke with the unseen. The shaman would beat the drum, slow and steady, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. The sound would fill the air, and soon the world would narrow to rhythm and firelight. They would dance, chant, breathe smoke and silence, all to cross into that other place, the one beyond what eyes can see. Anthropologists call it trance. Scientists now explain it in terms of brainwaves and rhythmic stimulation, but to those ancient people, it was a journey, a crossing of worlds. Through exhaustion or ecstasy, the shaman left their body behind. The tribe saw them tremble, eyes rolling, breath slowing. Then they would collapse into stillness, as if death had claimed them. But they weren't gone. They were walking the spirit road. Where that road led depended on the tribe. To some, it climbed up through the sky, past the stars, to the realm of ancestors. To others, it plunged downward, deep into the root of the world where shadowed beings dwelled. Whether up or down, the goal was the same: to restore balance, to bring healing, to seek answers where ordinary minds could not go. The image of this journey echoes through cultures around the world. In Northern Europe, it was the world tree, an unseen pillar connecting heaven, earth, and underworld. In Norse myth, it became Yggdrasil, the great ash tree that binds all realms. To the Siberian tribes, it was the same, a ladder between the seen and unseen. Caves still hold evidence of these ancient beliefs. In places like Lascaux and Chauvet, deep beneath the French hills, Paleolithic art shows beings part human, part animal, perhaps the oldest depictions of shamans mid-transformation. The sorcerer of Trois Frères, with the antlers of a stag and the body of a man, stands as testimony to a time when spirit and flesh were not separate things. These weren't decorations. They were sacred acts. Every line of ochre, every drumbeat, every chant was meant to open the veil, to make contact with the powers that could shape fate. And for those early people, that mattered. Because life then was fragile, uncertain, terrifying. When storms leveled your shelter or a child fell sick in the night, understanding why was everything. That's why the shaman mattered. They made sense of the unknown. They brought meaning to what might otherwise seem cruel or random. Through ritual and rhythm, they restored hope. Modern science calls that psychology, the placebo effect, mind over matter. But for the ancients, it was something deeper. They weren't playing tricks on belief. They were keeping hope alive. The roots of healing and religion both grow from this same soil. The shaman was the first doctor, the first storyteller, the first priest. They blended art, medicine, and myth long before those words existed. From Siberia to Scandinavia, from Celtic seers to Norse vulva, every culture carried the same archetype, the one who could stand between worlds and return. Even the tools endured: the drum, the rattle, the mask, the antlers, all instruments of transformation. Each symbolized crossing from human identity into something larger, something shared with the earth itself. Music played a vital role. The beating of the drum was more than sound, it was a key. Repetition reshaped the mind, unlocking what modern neuroscience would call an altered state. But our ancestors didn't have that vocabulary. To them, rhythm was the language of life. Picture the scene again. The fire flickers, shadows merge and stretch. A drumbeat begins. Slow, steady. The shaman moves, hair wild, breath sharp, covered in paint. The people watch, hearts sinking with the rhythm. The air thickens, charged, alive. And then, silence. The shaman crumples, eyes closed, breath still. Moments, or maybe hours, pass. When they open their eyes again, something in them is changed. They speak words no one has heard before. A song, a vision, a command from spirits or ancestors. And whether it was prophecy or poetry, what mattered most wasn't proof. It was belief. Because in belief, hope is reborn. The next day, the hunters find a herd. The sick child's fever breaks. Coincidence or miracle, it doesn't matter. What mattered was that the world made sense again. That is the essence of the shaman's legacy. Not control over nature, but communication with it. They gave humanity something priceless, the feeling that we weren't alone in the dark. And that feeling survived. Thousands of years later, fragments of that ancient worldview still linger. In tribal healing ceremonies of the Arctic, in the drum circles of Mongolia, in the myths of Odin sacrificing himself on Yggdrasil to gain wisdom, even in modern psychotherapy's roots in symbolism and ritual. The language has changed, the costumes evolved, but the purpose remains: to reach beyond the surface of reality and bring back something that heals, something that teaches, something that connects. The shaman's drum has become the therapist's voice, the artist's canvas, the musician's rhythm. Each still attempts the same act, bridging the gap between what is seen and what is felt. As the fire dies and night returns, imagine that ancient figure one last time, alone at the edge of the circle, staring into the dark. Around them the tribe sleeps. Above them, a sky thick with stars. Somewhere beyond that silence, the drum still beats, and the walker between worlds walks still.